The silence in the emergency session of the United Nations was deafening as Ambassador Chun Wei stared at the holographic display floating above the conference table. The images were crystal clear, transmitted across 17 light-years from the mining colony of New Harmony in the Kepler 442 system. 90,000 human colonists stood in perfect rows on the planet's main plaza, their hands bound behind their backs with energy restraints that glowed an ominous purple in the alien twilight. Above them loomed the massive bulk of an Imperial hegemony warship, its obsidian hull reflecting the twin suns of the system. The ship was a Dominator-class dreadnought, nearly 3 kilometers long and bristling with weapons that could crack a planet's crust. But today it served as a stage for something far more sinister than mere destruction. Citizens of the lesser species, came the voice of Overlord Thane Koss, his words automatically translated by the universal communicators. The reptilian alien stood nearly 3 meters tall, his scaled hide a deep emerald that shifted to crimson around his neck and shoulders. 4 arms gestured dramatically as he addressed not just the doomed colonists below, but the cameras that broadcast this atrocity across known space. Today marks the end of your kind's foolish resistance to the natural order of the galaxy. In the UN chamber, Secretary General Rodriguez felt his stomach turn as he watched the scene unfold. The hegemony had been humanity's first contact with alien intelligence, and what should have been a moment of wonder had quickly turned into humanity's worst nightmare. The reptilian empire controlled nearly 40% of the galaxy, ruling over dozens of species with an iron fist that crushed any hint of independence or rebellion. For too long, you humans have believed yourselves capable of self-governance. Thane Koss continued, his voice carrying the arrogance of a species that had conquered worlds before Earth had even developed agriculture. Your stubborn refusal to accept our benevolent rule has cost innocent lives. Today, we correct this error in the most educational way possible. The camera feed switched between multiple angles, showing the terrified faces of men, women, and children who had committed no crime other than being born human. Among them stood Dr. Sarah Martinez, the colony's chief xenobiologist, whose research on peaceful coexistence had made her target. Her 8-year-old daughter, Elena, clung to her leg, too young to understand why the scary aliens wanted to hurt them. In Washington, D.C., President Sarah Thompson watched the feed from the Oval Office, her knuckles white as she gripped the arms of her chair. General Marcus Stone, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, stood beside her with an expression that could have melted steel. The room was packed with advisors, military officials, and cabinet members, but no one spoke as they witnessed what would later be known as the New Harmony Massacre. The galaxy has watched your species' pathetic attempts at resistance, Thane Koss declared, raising all 4 of his arms. You possess no advanced technology, no powerful allies, no strategic resources that cannot be easily replaced. You are insects pretending to be equals among giants. Behind him, hegemony soldiers began moving through the crowds of prisoners. These were Korthak warriors, 7-foot-tall, bear-like creatures with natural armor plating and strength that could crush human bones like twigs. Each carried a plasma rifle calibrated specifically to cause maximum suffering before death. The psychological impact was as important as the physical destruction. Ambassador Chun Wei from the Chinese delegation leaned forward as the alien overlord continued his speech. The ambassador had been one of the key negotiators during humanity's first contact protocols, and he remembered the hope they had all felt when the hegemony ships first appeared in Earth's solar system. That hope had died quickly when the aliens made their demands clear: complete subjugation or total annihilation. Let this serve as a lesson to any who would challenge the hegemony's righteous authority, Thane Koss announced. Resistance is not just futile, it is stupid. Your Earth shall witness the price of defiance, and perhaps your leaders will finally understand their place in the cosmic order. The first shot rang out across the plaza, a brilliant blue plasma bolt that struck down a young engineer who had been trying to shield his pregnant wife. The woman's scream cut through the alien atmosphere, and somehow seemed to reach across the void of space to pierce the hearts of everyone watching. More shots followed in rapid succession as the execution squad worked their way through the crowds with mechanical efficiency. Dr. Martinez held her daughter close as the plasma fire grew nearer. She whispered words of love and comfort, trying to be brave for Elena, even as her own tears fell freely. When a Korthak soldier approached them, his massive rifle aimed directly at her chest, she met his gaze with dignity that even an alien executioner could recognize. The transmission continued for nearly 6 hours, broadcast on every available channel throughout human space. The hegemony wanted to ensure that every human colony, every space station, every ship in the fleet would witness this moment. They wanted to break humanity's spirit completely, to make resistance seem not just impossible, but insane. As the sun set on New Harmony, the plaza fell silent except for the low hum of the hegemony's ship's engines. 90,000 human lives have been extinguished in a single day, their only crime being their refusal to kneel before alien masters. The cameras lingered on the empty space where the colony had gathered, now marked only by scorch marks on the alien concrete. In the UN chamber, the delegates sat in stunned silence as the transmission finally ended. Some wept openly, while others stared at the blank screen with expressions of rage and disbelief. The Japanese representative was the first to speak, his voice barely a whisper. "What do we do now?" Secretary General Rodriguez looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. They had been backed into a corner by a force they could not match in technology or numbers. The hegemony controlled faster-than-light travel, energy weapons that could level cities, and a military force that numbered in the trillions. Earth had barely managed to establish a dozen colonies beyond the solar system, and their most advanced weapons were primitive compared to alien technology. But as Rodriguez studied the faces around him, he saw something that perhaps Thane-Kos had not expected to see in humanity's response to this atrocity. Instead of the broken submission the aliens had hoped for, he saw something far more dangerous: cold, calculated fury. President Thompson's voice crackled through the secure communication link from Washington. "I want a full assessment of our military capabilities within 12 hours. Every ship, every weapon, every asset we have available. The gloves are coming off." General Stone nodded grimly as he began making notes on his tablet. "Madam President, with respect, our conventional forces would be slaughtered in any direct confrontation with the hegemony. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "Then we don't fight conventionally," came the reply. "We fight like humans." The transmission from New Harmony had been intended to break humanity's will to resist. Instead, it had awakened something that the galaxy had not seen in millennia. A species with absolutely nothing left to lose, and the determination to make their enemies pay in blood for every life taken. As the emergency session continued through the night, military planners began pulling files that had been classified since the early days of space exploration. Deep in the Pentagon's subbasements, forgotten protocols were dusted off and updated. The hegemony might control the galaxy, but they had made one critical error in their assessment of humanity. They had assumed that a technologically inferior species would simply accept their fate. They had never encountered anything like the human capacity for vengeful innovation when pushed beyond all reasonable limits. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin, and it would be unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The Marine Corps recruit depot at Paris Island had never seen anything like the flood of volunteers that arrived in the weeks following the New Harmony massacre. Young men and women came from every corner of Earth and the colonies, their eyes burning with a fury that drill instructors recognized immediately. These weren't ordinary recruits looking for adventure or career advancement. These were people who had witnessed an atrocity and decided that someone needed to pay for it. Staff Sergeant Maria Vasquez watched from her office window as another transport ship landed, disgorging hundreds of new volunteers onto the parade grounds. At 35, she was a 20-year veteran who had served in conflict across human space, but she had never seen raw recruits with this level of focused rage. It was simultaneously inspiring and terrifying. "Gunny," called Corporal Jackson from the doorway. "Colonel Martinez wants to see you in the briefing room. Says it's about the new program." Vasquez nodded and made her way through corridors buzzing with activity. The base had tripled its training capacity in just 2 weeks, with temporary facilities sprouting up across the South Carolina coastline. Every available space was being converted to house and train the massive influx of volunteers who wanted to take the fight to the hegemony. In a classified briefing room, She found Colonel Martinez standing before a holographic display showing technical schematics that looked nothing like standard Marine equipment. The weapons and armor designs were sleek and aggressive, incorporating technology that seemed almost alien in its sophistication. Gunny Vasquez, the colonel began without preamble. I'm about to read you into a program that officially doesn't exist. Are you familiar with the Prometheus Project? Vasquez shook her head. Like most Marines, she knew that various black projects existed in the bowels of government research facilities, but the details were far above her security clearance. 3 years ago, our intelligence services managed to acquire several pieces of hegemony technology from a crash scout ship, Martinez continued. The eggheads at DARPA have been reverse engineering it ever since. What they've created isn't as advanced as what the aliens have, but it's close enough to level the playing field. The hologram shifted to show a powered exoskeleton that looked like something from a science fiction movie. The armor was matte black with glowing blue accents, and the weapon systems integrated into the design were clearly not of human origin. The Mark 7 adaptive combat system, Martinez explained. It enhances human strength, speed, and reflexes by a factor of 10. The armor can withstand direct hits from hegemony plasma weapons, and the integrated weapons package includes miniaturized railguns, smart missiles, and energy shields. Each suit costs more than a destroyer to build, but it can turn a single Marine into the equivalent of a platoon. Vasquez studied the specifications with growing amazement. The performance numbers seemed impossible, but the data was coming directly from Pentagon sources. How many suits do we have? Currently? About 500. By the time we're ready to deploy, we'll have over 5,000. Enough to equip an entire regiment of volunteers who are willing to do what needs to be done. The colonel's expression grew grim as he continued. This isn't going to be a conventional military operation, Gunny. The hegemony controls faster-than-light communication and transportation networks that we can't match. They have orbital supremacy and numerical advantage in every engagement. We can't fight them ship to ship or planet to planet. Then, how do we fight them, sir? Martinez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We fight dirty. We use the one advantage we have that they don't expect: human adaptability and our complete willingness to do whatever it takes to win. Over the following weeks, Vasquez threw herself into learning the new systems while helping to train the most motivated group of recruits she had ever encountered. The volunteers came from every walk of life. Former soldiers seeking redemption, scientists who wanted to turn their knowledge into weapons, engineers who dreamed of making alien technology pay for human blood. Among them was Private First Class David Kim, a former video game designer who had watched his sister die in the New Harmony broadcast. His technical expertise with complex systems made him a natural fit for the powered armor, but it was his cold determination to make the aliens suffer that caught Vasquez's attention. The hegemony thinks we're primitive because we don't have their technology, Kim said during one training session, his voice steady despite the intense physical demands of the exoskeleton conditioning. They don't understand that humans are the most adaptable species in the galaxy. We take whatever we can find and turn it into a weapon. The training was unlike anything in the history of human warfare. The volunteers learned to fight in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, and in the high-radiation environments common around alien installations. They practiced boarding actions on mock-up hegemony ships, learning to navigate the cramped corridors and unusual layouts that alien engineers favored. Most importantly, they learned to think like their enemy. Intelligence analysts who had studied hegemony psychology briefed them on alien weaknesses and blind spots. The reptilian overlords were arrogant and predictable, used to fighting species that either submitted quickly or were crushed through overwhelming force. They had never encountered an enemy that would sacrifice everything for revenge. Captain Sarah Chun, formerly of the Colonial Defense Force, led many of the tactical planning sessions. She had been off-world during the New Harmony massacre, but her parents and younger brother had been among the 90,000. Her expertise in small unit tactics and her personal motivation made her invaluable in developing assault strategies. The key to our success, she explained to a room full of armored Marines, is that we're not trying to conquer territory or establish control. We're here to send a message. Every hegemony facility we hit Every alien we kill, every ship we destroy tells them that humanity doesn't forget and doesn't forgive. The psychological warfare aspect was as important as the military training. Human intelligence services had spent months analyzing hegemony communication networks, learning how to inject propaganda and disinformation into their systems. The goal was to make the aliens paranoid and uncertain, to make them question whether the humans they thought they had cowed were actually planning something terrible. Meanwhile, in the deepest levels of classified research facilities, human scientists worked around the clock to weaponize their grief. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, who had lost her daughter in the massacre, led a team developing biological weapons specifically designed to target hegemony physiology. The work was morally questionable, but after watching 90,000 humans die for alien entertainment, moral considerations seemed less important than effectiveness. Their respiratory systems are surprisingly vulnerable to certain viral agents, she explained to the military liaison assigned her project. We can't deploy these weapons on a large scale without risking our own people, but for targeted assassination missions, they could be devastatingly effective. As the months passed, the volunteers transformed from grief-stricken civilians into something far more dangerous. They learned to use human weaknesses as strengths, turning their smaller size into advantages in boarding actions and their technological limitations into opportunities for creative problem-solving. The hegemony, meanwhile, had moved on from a New Harmony massacre as if it were just another routine administrative action. Their intelligence services noted increased military activity in human space, but they dismissed it as the futile posturing of a conquered species. After all, what could a few thousand primitives accomplish against the might of a galactic empire? Overlord Thane Koss, now commanding the hegemony's 7th Fleet from his flagship in the Vega system, spent his time planning the next phase of human subjugation. Several more colonies would need to be made examples of before Earth finally accepted its proper place in the imperial hierarchy. The massacres were regrettable, but necessary, and the reptilian commander felt no more guilt about them than a human would feel about exterminating a nest of particularly troublesome insects. He had no idea that 5,000 human marines were already moving through the dark between the stars, their ships running silent, and their armor powered down to avoid detection. They had trained for this moment with the focused intensity of a species with absolutely nothing left to lose, and they were about to teach the galaxy what happened when you push humanity too far. The revenge of the human race was coming, and it would be swift, brutal, and absolutely merciless. The mining facility on Kepler 438b had been operating for over 2 centuries, extracting rare metals from the planet's core to fuel the hegemony's vast war machine. The installation housed nearly 10,000 alien workers and was protected by a garrison of elite Korthak warriors. It was also completely unprepared for what was about to hit it. Commander Sarah Chun floated in the cargo bay of the stealth transport ship Retribution, checking her squad's equipment one final time. Around her, 49 other Marines in Mark 7 armor performed their own pre-mission rituals. The powered suits were works of art in their own right, each one customized to its wearer's preferences and combat style. Chen's armor bore the names of her family members killed at New Harmony, etched into the chest plate where she could see them with every breath. 2 minutes to drop, came the pilot's voice over the comm system. Remember, we're ghosts until the party starts. No comm chatter, no active sensors, and no heroes. We stick to the plan. The plan was elegantly simple in its brutality. Human intelligence had identified 17 key hegemony installations across 8 star systems, each one selected for maximum psychological impact rather than strategic value. The attacks would be coordinated to occur simultaneously, creating the impression that humanity possessed capabilities far beyond what the aliens believed possible. Chen's target was the primary command center of the mining facility. Her squad would eliminate the commanding officers while other teams hit the power grid, communication arrays, and defensive positions. The goal wasn't to hold territory, but to send an unmistakable message. Nowhere was safe from human vengeance. 60 seconds, the pilot announced. Opening bay doors. The cargo bay filled with the howling of alien atmosphere as the transport ship's stealth systems kept it invisible to the facility's sensors. Below them, The mining complex spread across several square kilometers of barren landscape, its massive extractors working day and night to tear valuable resources from the planet's crust. Go, go, go! Chun leaped from the transport, her armor's microthrusters adjusting her trajectory as she fell toward the alien facility. Around her, the rest of the squad dropped like vengeful angels, their black armor making them nearly invisible against the star-filled sky. The powered suit's landing systems absorbed the impact silently, depositing 50 Marines in the heart of enemy territory without triggering a single alarm. Moving like shadows, Chen's team made their way through the facility's maze of corridors and industrial equipment. The aliens had grown complacent after centuries of unchallenged dominance, and their security protocols were designed to prevent theft rather than military assault. Guards stood at predictable intervals, their attention focused inward rather than watching for threats from space. The first Korthak sentry died without even knowing humans were on the planet. Chen's plasma knife slid between his armor plates with surgical precision, the alien's massive form collapsing silently to the metal floor. Her armor's camouflage systems had made her effectively invisible until the moment she struck. Private Kim moved like a ghost through the facility's computer center, his technical expertise allowing him to slice through alien security protocols with ease. The hegemony's arrogance worked against them here. They had never bothered to encrypt their systems against human intrusion because they considered humanity technologically primitive. Command network compromised, he whispered into the comm system. I have access to their communication grid and facility schematics. They have no idea we're here. Throughout the facility, similar scenes were playing out as Marine fire teams eliminated guards and gained control of key systems. The aliens had built their installation assuming they would face conventional attacks from orbital bombardment or massed infantry assaults. They had never prepared for small units of enhanced soldiers who could move through their defenses like smoke. Chun reached the command center's outer perimeter and paused to study the target through her armor's enhanced vision systems. Inside the heavily armored chamber, she could see Facility Commander Gorthak reviewing production reports with typical alien efficiency. The reptilian officer was responsible for overseeing the extraction operations that helped fund the hegemony's expansion, but more importantly, he had personally overseen the execution of human prisoners captured during the initial conquest of this system. All teams report ready, came the quiet voice of Lieutenant Torres from the communications array. We have control of their external communications and can broadcast on all frequencies when you give the word. Chun checked her chronometer. In 17 different star systems, Marine teams were preparing to strike simultaneously. The coordination required had been challenging, but human ingenuity had found ways to synchronize the attacks despite the vast distances involved. Execute on my mark, she transmitted to all teams. 3, 2, 1 mark. The facility's lights went out as Marines severed the main power grid, plunging the installation into emergency illumination that cast eerie shadows throughout the corridors. At the same moment, plasma charges detonated across the complex, destroying critical infrastructure and creating chaos among the alien workers. Chin burst through the command center's armored doors like an avenging spirit, her rail gun spitting hypersonic projectiles that tore through alien equipment and personnel with equal ease. Commander Gorthak spun toward the intrusion, his 4 arms reaching for weapons that were suddenly inadequate against human technology. Ew! The alien hissed in accented standard. Impossible. Your species lacks the capability for such operations. Chin's response was delivered at the speed of her weapon's projectiles. The railgun rounds punched through Gorthak's armor like it was made of paper, the kinetic energy turning the alien commander into a spreading cloud of organic debris. Around the command center, his staff suffered similar fates as Chin's squad eliminated every living being in the chamber. Command center secured, she reported. Beginning Phase 2. Throughout the facility, Marine teams were systematically hunting down every alien they could find. This wasn't a battle for territory or resources. It was an extermination mission designed to send the clearest possible message to the hegemony leadership. No alien would survive to describe exactly how the humans had penetrated their defenses, but the evidence of what had happened would speak for itself. Private Martinez led a team through the facility's residential sections, where off-duty workers had been sleeping peacefully until the attack began. The aliens scrambled from their quarters in panic, only to find death waiting in the corridors. Martinez's squad moved with mechanical efficiency, their enhanced reflexes and superior firepower making the slaughter almost anticlimactic. Processing center cleared, reported Sergeant Williams from the facility's main industrial area. All alien personnel eliminated. Beginning demolition sequence. The Marines had brought enough explosives to level the entire complex, but their orders were more specific. They were to destroy key equipment while leaving enough intact structure to serve as a monument to human vengeance. Future investigators would find clear evidence that humans had been responsible, along with a very specific message. As the teams prepared for extraction, Chen made her way to the facility's main communication array. Lieutenant Torres had already sliced into the hegemony's communication networks, giving them access to broadcast on military frequencies throughout the sector. "This is Commander Sarah Chun of the Earth Marine Corps," she began, her voice carrying across dozens of star systems. "Today, 90,000 of our people died for your amusement. We want you to know that we remember every name, every face, every life you stole from us." The transmission was being recorded by hegemony intelligence services across the galaxy, exactly as the Marines intended. The aliens needed to understand that this was not a random act of terrorism, but a calculated response to their atrocity. "You believe you are superior because your technology is more advanced, because your empire spans the galaxy, because you have the power to murder innocents for entertainment," Chun continued. "But you made one critical error in your assessment of humanity. You assumed we would accept our fate like the other species you have conquered." Kim had finished uploading a virus into the facility's computer systems that would spread through the hegemony's networks, carrying with it detailed recordings of the New Harmony massacre. Every alien command post in the galaxy would be forced to watch the execution of human civilians, and they would understand exactly why their people were dying. "We are coming for every one of you," Chun concluded her transmission. "We will hunt you across the galaxy, and we will make you pay for every life you took. Your technology cannot protect you from human determination. Your numbers cannot shield you from human ingenuity. Your empire cannot save you from human vengeance." The Marines began their withdrawal as carefully as they had arrived, leaving behind a facility that looked like it had been struck by a natural disaster. The aliens' bodies had been arranged in specific patterns that human intelligence knew would carry psychological significance for the reptilian species. The message was unmistakable. This was just the beginning. As the transport ships slipped away from Kepler 438b, similar scenes were playing out across hegemony space. 17 installations had been hit simultaneously, each one chosen for its symbolic value rather than strategic importance. The aliens were learning that their former victims possessed capabilities they had never suspected. In the Vega system, Overlord Thangkos received the first reports of the attacks with disbelief that quickly turned to rage. The primitive humans had somehow managed to coordinate strikes across multiple star systems, penetrating defenses that should have been impregnable. The psychological impact was exactly what the Marines had intended. "Impossible," he snarled at his intelligence chief. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. They lack faster-than-light communication. How could they coordinate simultaneous attacks?" The truth was beginning to dawn on the hegemony leadership. They had gravely underestimated their human adversaries. The species they had dismissed as primitive insect had just demonstrated capabilities that suggested they were far more dangerous than anyone had realized. The war had begun in earnest, and humanity had drawn first blood. The emergency session of the Hegemony High Command convened in the crystalline chambers of their capital world, Nexus Prime, with an urgency that had not been seen in over 3 centuries. The massive chamber, carved from a single piece of quantum-stabilized crystal, housed representatives from every major species in the Galactic Empire. The air thrummed with tension as reports continued to pour in from across hegemony space. Supreme Overlord Vexthara, the ancient leader of the reptilian species that had founded the Empire, stood nearly 4 meters tall at the center of the chamber. Her scales had turned the deep black of extreme old age, and her 6 arms moved with the deliberate precision of someone who had ruled for over 800 years. In all her time as Supreme Leader, she had never faced a crisis quite like this. 17 installations, she hissed, her voice carrying across the chamber witut need for amplification. 17 simultaneous attacks across 8 star systems. Over 6,000 of our people dead, and we have no clear understanding of how the humans accomplished this feat. Intelligence Director Kothmar, a spider-like being from the Arachnos Consortium, scuttled forward on 8 legs to present his analysis. His species had been responsible for gathering information on conquered world for the past millennium, and their network of spies and informants was considered unbreachable. Supreme Overlord, he began, his translator rendering his clicking speech in his standard hegemony. Our preliminary analysis suggests the humans have developed technology far beyond what we believe possible. The attack patterns indicate the use of advanced stealth systems, enhanced combat suits, and coordination methods that should be impossible given their primitive communication infrastructure. Overlord Thane Koss, attending the meeting via a holographic link from his flagship, interjected with barely controlled rage. This is clearly the work of another major power using humans as proxies. The Andromedan Collective, or perhaps the Void Stalkers. No primitive species could have developed such capabilities independently. That was my initial assessment as well, Kothmar replied. However, our analysis of the attacks reveals something more disturbing. The tactics used were uniquely human in their brutality and efficiency. The psychological messaging was specifically designed to target our species' behavioral patterns. This was not the work of another galactic power, but genuine human innovation. The chamber erupted in skeptical chatter from the assembled representatives. The idea that a recently contacted primitive species could pose a legitimate threat to the hegemony was almost incomprehensible. They had conquered over 40 species across the galaxy, each one eventually accepting their place in the imperial hierarchy after initial resistance. War Commander Brackthal of the Korthak warrior caste pounded his massive fist against his chair. Impossible. I have seen human combat capabilities firsthand. They are weak, their technology is primitive, and their military doctrine is chaotic. Even with advanced equipment, they lack the discipline and coordination for operations of this scale. And yet, Vexthera observed coldly, 6,000 of our people are dead, including some of your best warriors. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our assumptions about human capabilities. The Supreme Overlord activated a holographic display showing the aftermath of one of the attacks. The mining facility on Kepler 438b had been transformed into a gruesome monument to human vengeance. The bodies of alien personnel had been arranged in patterns that carried deep psychological significance for the reptilian species, while the facility's main computer core displayed a simple message in multiple languages. Remember New Harmony. The humans have made their intentions clear, Vexthera continued. They do not seek conquest or negotiation. They seek revenge. This is fundamentally different from any resistance movement we have encountered before. Dr. Yithmora, the Empire's chief xenopsychologist, floated forward in her containment tank filled with the acidic atmosphere her species required. The ethereal being's analysis of human behavior had been crucial in the early stages of contact, but even she seemed shaken by recent developments. The human psychological profile is unlike any species we have studied, she admitted through her tank's communication system. Most intelligent life forms prioritize survival over abstract concepts like revenge or honor. Humans appear to be willing to sacrifice everything for these intangible goals. When pushed to extremes, they become exponentially more dangerous rather than more compliant. The implications of this assessment sent a chill through the assembled leaders. The hegemony's expansion strategy had always relied on demonstrating overwhelming force to break a species' will to resist. The New Harmony massacre should have ended human resistance permanently. Instead, it seemed to have transformed them into something far more threatening. What are your recommendations? Vexthera asked the xenopsychologist. Complete extermination, Dr. Yithmora replied without hesitation. The human species represents an existential threat to imperial stability. Their refusal to accept proper hierarchy, combined with their apparent technological adaptability, makes them unsuitable for integration. We should deploy the full might of the Imperial fleet and eliminate every human world simultaneously. War Commander Brackthal nodded enthusiastically. My forces could accomplish this within a standard year. We have the firepower to crack their planets and the ships to hunt down any survivors. But Supreme Overlord Vexthera remained thoughtful as she considered the proposal. The hegemony had never before resorted to complete genocide against an intelligent species. Their empire was built on the labor and resources of conquered peoples, and eliminating entire populations was both economically wasteful and politically dangerous. Such action would send a troubling message to our other subject species, she observed. If they believe we will resort to total extermination at the first sign of serious resistance, they might choose to fight to the death rather than surrender. This could destabilize the entire empire. The debate continued for hours as the assembled leaders grappled with a problem they had never faced before. The humans had demonstrated capabilities that challenged every assumption about their species, and their apparent immunity to traditional intimidation tactics made them uniquely dangerous. Meanwhile, in the depths of space between the Vega and Altair systems, the human strike fleet continued its methodical campaign of terror. Admiral Rebecca Walsh commanded the operation from her flagship, a modified destroyer that had been stripped of unnecessary equipment and packed with stealth technology. The ship was invisible to hegemony sensors and could coordinate attacks across multiple star systems using quantum entanglement communication systems that even the aliens couldn't detect. Next target confirmed, reported her communications officer. The prison complex in the Tau Ceti system. Intelligence indicates they're holding nearly 50,000 human prisoners from the conquered colonies. Walsh studied the tactical display showing the heavily fortified facility. The complex was designed to hold dangerous prisoners from across the galaxy, and its defenses were significantly more advanced than the mining installations they had hit previously. This would be their most challenging operation yet. "How many Marines can we deploy?" she asked her operations officer. 200 in full Mark 7 armor, plus supporting equipment. We've also received authorization to deploy the new biological weapons that Dr. Harper's team developed. Walsh nodded grimly. The biological agents were specifically designed to target hegemony physiology, and their use would represent a significant escalation in the conflict. But the intelligence reports from the prison complex had convinced Earth's leadership that desperate measures were necessary. The prisoners are being used for medical experiments, the intelligence brief had explained. The hegemony is studying human physiology to develop more effective methods of control and intimidation. Some of the experiments are particularly creative in their cruelty. The decision to rescue the prisoners would expose human capabilities that they had kept hidden, but the alternative was leaving 50,000 people to suffer fates worse than death. For a species motivated by vengeance rather than strategic calculation, the choice was obvious. "Begin preparation for Operation Breakout," Walsh commanded, "and transmit a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're escalating to Phase 3. Back on Nexus Prime, the hegemony leadership finally reached a consensus of sorts. They would deploy additional forces to protect key installations while gathering more intelligence on human capabilities. A massive fleet under Overlord Thane-Koss would hunt down the human raiders and demonstrate the price of continued resistance. What they didn't realize was that the humans had been waiting for exactly this response. Every move the hegemony made was being anticipated by strategists who understood that their only chance of survival lay in forcing the aliens to make predictable decisions. The trap was already being set, and the galaxy's most powerful empire was walking directly into it. The war between humanity and the hegemony had entered a new phase, and both sides were about to learn just how far they were willing to go to achieve their goals. The prison complex orbiting Tau Ceti B was a monument to hegemony efficiency and cruelty. The massive structure, built into a captured asteroid, housed the most dangerous criminals and political prisoners from across the empire. Its location in the heavily defended Tau Ceti system made it virtually impregnable, protected by orbital defense platforms and patrolled by an entire fleet of warships. Commander Sarah Chun floated in the docking bay of the stealth ship Vengeance, watching her Marines perform final equipment checks. This mission was different from their previous strikes in every possible way. Instead of hit-and-run terrorism designed to send a message, they were attempting a rescue operation against one of the most secure facilities in hegemony space. "Remember," she told her assembled force of 200 Marines, "we have 50,000 human prisoners scattered throughout that facility. Some of them have been held for over 5 years, and intelligence suggests they're being used for medical experimentation. We're bringing them home, no matter the cost. The plan was audacious, even by human standards. They would infiltrate the facility using a captured hegemony transport ship, eliminate the guards, and extract every human prisoner while fighting off whatever response the aliens could muster. The odds of success were minimal, but that had never stopped Marines before. Private Kim, now wearing sergeant stripes earned through months of successful operations, led the technical team responsible for infiltrating the facility's security systems. His expertise with alien technology had grown substantially since their first mission, and he had developed an almost intuitive understanding of how hegemony computers functioned. Their security protocols are more sophisticated here, he reported as they approached the facility. But they're still using the same fundamental architecture. I can get us inside, but once the shooting starts, we'll have maybe 20 minutes before they lock down everything. The transport ship Herald of Prosperity had been captured during a raid on a hegemony supply convoy, and human engineers had spent weeks modifying it to carry Marine assault teams. To external sensors, it appeared to be exactly what it claimed to be, a routine cargo delivery to the prison complex. Transport Herald of Prosperity requesting docking clearance. Transmitted Lieutenant Torres in perfect hegemony standard. We have medical supplies for the research facility. The response came back immediately, confirming their cover identity and directing them to docking Bay 7. The hegemony's bureaucratic efficiency worked in their favor. The aliens were so confident in their security that they rarely questioned routine deliveries. As the transport ship settled into the docking bay, Chan could see hegemony personnel moving to unload what they thought was a cargo shipment. Instead, they were about to receive 200 Marines armed with the most advanced weapons humanity could produce. Go, go, go. The docking bay erupted in chaos as Marine teams poured from the transport ship. Their Mark 7 armor making them nearly invulnerable to the light weapons carried by the facility's guards. Chen's railgun spat hypersonic projectiles that tore through alien armor and equipment with equal ease, while her team spread out to secure the bay's exits. Alarms began shrieking throughout the facility as the Marines fought their way into the main complex. The prison's corridors were narrow and cramped, designed to prevent mass prisoner movements, but they also channeled the defending aliens into kill zones where human firepower could be most effective. Sergeant Kim's team reached the central computer core within minutes of the initial breach. The facility's security systems were designed to prevent escapes rather than repel military assaults, and the Marines' adaptive tactics allowed them to bypass most of the automated defenses. "I'm in their system," Kim reported as his fingers flew across alien interfaces. "Locating human prisoners now. Jesus Christ, they've got people scattered across 17 different levels. Some of these cells haven't been opened in years." The intelligence they gathered painted a horrific picture of hegemony treatment of human captives. The aliens weren't simply imprisoning their enemies. They were conducting systematic experiments to understand human physiology and psychology. The research was aimed at developing more effective methods of control and intimidation for future conquests. Priority rescue targets identified, Kim continued. Dr. Elizabeth Martinez from New Harmony is being held on Level 8. She's been used as a test subject for biological weapons research. Chun felt her blood freeze. Dr. Martinez had been the colony's chief medical officer, and her expertise in xenobiology had made her a prime target for hegemony scientists. If she was still alive after 5 years of captivity, her knowledge of alien biology could be invaluable to the human resistance. Team 3, you're with me, Chun commanded. We're going after the VIP targets. Everyone else, begin systematic prisoner extraction. Use the demo charges if you have to blast through the cell doors. The Marines fought their way through the facility's maze of corridors, encountering increasingly desperate resistance as hegemony security forces realized the scope of the attack. The aliens had never faced an assault like this before, and their standard protocols were proving inadequate against human tactics. Captain Rodriguez led a team toward the facility's main detention levels, where thousands of human prisoners were being held in conditions that violated every conceivable standard of civilized treatment. The cells were barely large enough for a single person, with no sanitation facilities and minimal life support. "Oh my God," whispered Corporal Martinez as they began breaking down cell doors. They're in terrible condition. Some of them can barely walk. The rescued prisoners were a cross-section of humanity's colonial population. Farmers, scientists, engineers, teachers, children who had grown up in captivity. Many were suffering from malnutrition and untreated medical conditions, while others showed signs of psychological trauma that would take years to heal. But they were alive, and they were going home. Dr. Elizabeth Martinez was found in a research laboratory on Level 8, strapped to an alien medical table, while hegemony scientists prepared to inject her with an experimental pathogen. The woman who had once been a respected physician was now emaciated and scarred, but her eyes still burned with the intelligence that had made her valuable to her captors. "Commander Chun," she whispered as the Marines cut her restraints. I never thought I'd see another human face." "You're safe now, Doctor," Chun replied gently. "We're getting you out of here." Dr. Martinez struggled to sit up, her body weakened by years of captivity. "The research, they've been developing biological weapons specifically designed to target human physiology. I've seen terrible things. They're planning something much worse than New Harmony." The implications of her words sent a chill through the Marines. If the hegemony was developing species-specific bioweapons, they might be planning the complete extermination of humanity rather than simple subjugation. "We'll debrief you once we're clear of this facility," Chin promised. "Right now, we need to move." The extraction operation continued for nearly 3 hours as Marine teams fought their way through the facility, rescuing every human prisoner they could find. The hegemony response was growing stronger by the minute, with reinforcements arriving from across the star system. But the Marines held their ground with grim determination. Finally, Kim's voice crackled through the comm system with the news they had been waiting for. "That's everyone, Commander. All surviving human prisoners are accounted for. We've got 47,000 people ready for extraction." The number was lower than they had hoped, but considering the conditions in the facility, it was miraculous that so many had survived. The Marines began their fighting withdrawal toward the docking bays, carrying wounded prisoners and providing covering fire as the rescue ships moved into position. As they reached the transport vessels, Chun took one last look at the prison facility that had housed so much human suffering. The Marines had planted demolition charges throughout the structure, and the explosion that followed would ensure that no alien would ever again use this place to torture human beings. "All teams, sound off," she commanded as the rescue fleet prepared to depart. "Mission status? Team 1, successful extraction of 3,000 prisoners. Team 2, extraction complete. 4,000 rescued." The reports continued as the rescue ships slipped away from the dying facility, their stealth systems hiding them from the hegemony fleet that was converging on the system. Nearly 50,000 human beings were finally free, and they carried with them intelligence that would prove crucial to humanity's survival. But the rescue had cost them their greatest advantage: surprise. The hegemony now knew that humans possessed capabilities far beyond what they had believed possible. The aliens would adapt their strategies, strengthen their defenses, and begin developing countermeasures for human technology. The war was entering a new phase, one in which both sides would be forced to commit everything they had to achieve victory. For humanity, there was no choice but to continue fighting. They had tasted alien blood, rescued their people, and sent a message that echoed across the galaxy. Humanity would never surrender, never submit, and never stop fighting until every last human being was free or dead. The hegemony had wanted to demonstrate their power by broadcasting the execution of 90,000 humans. Instead, they had awakened a force that would burn across the galaxy like a cleansing fire, and nothing would ever be the same again.